Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I am talking to Dr. Gill from Charles E. Smith. We are going to have a conversation about older people, senior living, resident mental health and loneliness and depression. Particularly the friendships is an area that if you're watching the things I'm writing about, you know that I'm really passionate and spending a lot of time thinking about that. So we're going to get into our conversation right after this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Welcome to Foresight TV. So let's start with a couple of preliminaries. So Dr. Gill is what you go by typically?
Yes, everybody calls me Dr. Gill.
Perfect. So let's start with, it's sort of the question I start with every person I talk to on our live streams is, kind of, what's your passion? What is it that you're focused on? How are you changing the world of senior living?
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on today, and hello to all your audience. So believe it or not, I've been in the geriatric world since I was 15 years old. I think I just had a natural calling toward older people and geriatrics. I'm European by ethnicity, and so my grandmother lived with us until she died. And so it was just normal to have, that older generation living in the home. But I started working in a nursing home when I was 15 as a volunteer. And then I got my first job there when I turned 16. So I have been around old people pretty much my whole adolescent adult life. But I'm board certified in geriatrics, palliative care, and hospice. So I trained, in addition to internal medicine, I did an extra 2 years of training in geriatrics. So geriatricians are specialized in people of older age. That used to be 65 and over, but that's too young for us now. So typically I would say it's like 80 and over is really the population that we like to spend our time with. And so my passion and my focus is helping seniors and helping older people after that age, just basically live the best life that they can, but also with palliative care and hospice. We also train, and I'm passionate about helping people die a dignified death and honoring their wishes. So all of that.
That's a broad spectrum. As you probably know, I manage the all the affairs for my 93-year-old stepfather. He's deep into declining cognitive abilities with dementia. He lives in a senior living community. And I'm discovering that even though I've got a really good senior living community that's doing a great job, it still takes a lot of work and a lot of emotional strain. And I'm also really interested in this mental health and the loneliness issues and all those kinds of things. Before we actually get into the conversation, talk to me a little bit about Charles E. Smith and your role there.
Sure. So I have been with Charles E. Smith Life Communities located in Rockville, Maryland for the past 13 years. We've been around 116 years, believe it or not, doing senior living, senior health, senior wellness. We are in the senior space. We have a broad array of services we deliver, everything from independent living and helping people live independently for as long as possible in their apartment, in their home with services if they need them, assisted living at our Landau house, and a memory unit in that assisted living specifically for people living with dementia and a lot of end-stage memory issues. We have a nursing home called Hebrew Home of Greater Washington. That was our flagship, so that's what I think we're most known for. We have an outpatient private practice for community people Hirsch Health Center is our outpatient geriatric. It's a geriatric doctor that focuses on seniors, and that's for outpatient medicine. And then we also have Smith Life Home Care, which is our home health branch of our business that helps people in the community with all types of senior related healthcare and non-healthcare issues. So we've been around a long time. This is our passion. This is all we do. This is all we know. I personally and professionally oversee the medical affairs for the whole campus. So I'm the executive vice president for medical affairs for the whole place. We have a little over 1,000 people living here. 1,000 seniors live here. We have about 800 associates that work here. It's a very, very large place. We're one of the largest we are the largest in the Mid-Atlantic, but one of the largest in the country. I am also the chief medical officer, so all the doctors and nurse practitioners report to me. I am also a regular doctor, geriatrician, so I have my own patient panel, and I have my own patients that I see, and I'm their primary care physician. Let me see. I know I wear more hats. I'm the medical director for the nursing home. And then I'm also the vice president of the Mid-Atlantic Medical Directors Association, representing Maryland, Delaware, and Washington, D.C., critically evaluating all issues related to aging well for seniors, but more politically inclined.
I have to tell you, I'm super impressed. I'm exhausted just hearing that long list of things that you do. I don't know how you do it all. So I came across this data. I think it came from you or your team. I'm gonna actually got to put my readers on to check this to make sure I get this right. So according to the what I read, research shows that 70% of the residents in senior housing are moderately or severely lonely, even though more than half of them saw family in the past month, and over 60% participate in group activities. How can that be?
Well, let me quote you some statistics. I don't disagree with that number. Mental illness, as you know, and mental health is a big concern because mental illness is very prevalent. So I pulled geriatric and senior data, but AARP in 2023 said that 1 in 5 older adults experience some kind of mental health concern. The most common is depression and anxiety. So there's a lot of mental illnesses, but really in, my many years of doing this job, depression and anxiety really rise to the top of that. And so with depression and anxiety come loneliness and social isolation. Obviously, the pandemic did nothing to help us, right? And so a lot of people being socially isolated during that pandemic and dying as a result of it, still haven't really come out of that. No. But I think I would say between depression and anxiety, that's probably one of my top 3 diagnoses for the majority of the patients that I see and that I treat. So your 70% is accurate.
Okay, so I got to ask a couple questions about this. So the first one that occurs to me is this a new phenomena? Are people more anxious, more depressed, more lonely than they were? Let's go to two levels, say pre-COVID, and then maybe than they were 30 years ago.
That's a good question, Steve. I don't know the exact statistics compared to 30 years ago, but I think there's a number of things, right? Number one, when you pay attention to something politically, socially, programs like yours, when you pay attention to a certain sector of the population and certain things that are happening with that sector of the population, to us, it seems like this is a new problem, right? Because people are talking about it, the media is covering it, whatever. I think COVID did help bringing that to the forefront because we knew people couldn't leave their homes for a year, couldn't see their family. They couldn't mask, so they couldn't see their family. They couldn't leave the nursing home. They couldn't leave their assisted living. So I think it just kind of brought it to the forefront. But has this always been there? Yes, of course, this has always been there. Now, different countries have different statistics, right? Because in the United States, personally, and again, this is my personal, but based on professional opinion, I think our country does a really, can I say the word crappy? Does a
Yes.
really crappy job with respecting our elders and our seniors. I don't think they put the care, the attention, the time, the resources into respecting our seniors. They really don't. But you look at other countries where, the Asian countries, the European countries, where elderly are revered, elderly are respected. And the older you are, that comes with status. And there's a lot of community values around those people aging well and living as long as possible and living a good life. Whereas if you compare and contrast here, and again, some of this is personal, some of this is definitely professional, and what I've seen with my families that I help, our people live in, I don't like to call them institutions, but they're facilities and they're residences where they live in congregate living settings where they're all of a sudden living with strangers and they're not with their family and they're not with their loved one. And, that's one part of it. So I think the way we address that definitely correlates to the higher numbers of depression, anxiety, social isolation, loneliness that we're seeing. That's one. Number two, like me, you, the sandwich generation, we're sandwiched. And so we're trying to give our time to so many different areas while still working full time and being professionals and climbing career ladders. But who kind of falls down that ladder is sort of our aging parents, right? So paying other people to help them and take care of them is just what you have to do. But would they prefer to be with you and with family and with people who know them? Probably. So there's that. And so I think it's always been there, but, maybe 50 years ago, I think communities were tighter. I think, neighbors were more willing to chip in and help. And so you were able to keep your father-in-law at home a lot longer. And now you don't have that community spirit or willingness anymore. So they're going into places, our people are moving into assisted living in their late 80s and having to adjust and adapt to now living in an environment with a bunch of strangers that I have to get to know.
So I got so many questions. I mean, sort of an observation first is that, even 30 years ago, we didn't have as many people living as long. And so maybe there weren't as many people to have those mental health issues because they passed away.
That's
so right. I can't help but thinking part of it. Is there any data about isolation, loneliness, mental health between living at home rather than living in senior living? As you sort of alluded to, the data all says that most people would rather stay at home than go into a senior living community. But there's also this belief that the industry puts out, and I think when it's done right, that's true, is that senior living can be the antidote for that. And I know you're doing some things, and so we're going to get to that in a bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're right. The other factor I was going to say is the longevity. So by us, modern medicine keeping people alive longer, so naturally your rates of dementia go up, your rates of cancer go up, your rates of mental illness go up, right? Because now people's life expectancy has increased by 20 years. So that's a lot, right? And as everything is aging, then sure. But yeah, facts on social isolation. So the data shows in the US, 1 out of 3, so 1/3 of elderly report loneliness or isolation, and about 1 in 4 are at an objective risk of social isolation, which comes with, physical implications, psychological implications, mental health implications, and overall decline in health implications. So that is a truth statement, what you said. The home situation, what I was referring to is just them feeling more comfortable in an environment where people know them and people can tend to them, and it's about them and they're an entity of one. But you are correct in that, again, professionally in my practice, I see people coming in resistantly. right? I'm 90 years old. I've made it to this age by myself. I don't need anybody. I'm fine. I can do this for myself. And they have that right. It's dignified to want to live your life the way you want to live your life. It's also dignified to die the way you want to die.
Yeah.
And so we have to respect that. But I do find you're correct. I do find that after some time, there's an adjustment period that's normal, right? They do embrace the community. And it's this sort of, okay, now I wake up with a purpose. I'm going to go sit with Mary, Susan, and Ellen for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we have conversation. And then in the middle of the day, I'm going to go to exercise, or I'm going to go to the music program. I'm going to go to the concert. It gives them this renewed sense of purpose. And believe it or not, I think they live longer and they live better, because now they have this engagement that they would not have if they were home by themselves, relying on people to come in and out. You know what I mean? So, but really what I found over the years, it's really individual dependent, because I also have people that are loners and they've always been introverts and they don't care for any of that community setting activity, and they still like to be by themselves.
Yeah. So
it depends.
This is really fascinating stuff to me. So it's been a while since I looked at it, but I saw some data that says that even loners need a friend. And so when I look at resident populations and I go into communities and I talk to family members, I sort of see three groups of people. Yeah. I see the extroverts, 10 or 15, maybe 20% in some buildings. They're going to, it doesn't matter where they're at. They're going to find a new best friend. They're going to participate in everything. They're going to be happy and joyful. They're going to make a difference in people's lives. And then there's this other group, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of data on it, of the people that you just described, the people who are kind of reclusive and happy with it. It's hard for me because I like people a lot. And so it's hard for me to imagine that anybody could be happy not having that. But I recognize intellectually, I recognize that group is there. But then there's this big group in the middle who I think is objectively lonely, who want friends, but have a really hard time making those connections on their own. And there's some communities who've done some things about it. There's a community up in Canada that they have this green bench thing that they have these green benches around the community. And the idea is if you go down and sit down on a green bench, you're inviting somebody to come down and sit and have a conversation. I really, really like that. That concept, and I'm actually going to have their leadership. They've got a new film out. We're going to be talking to them in the next few months on one of our live streams. But talk to me a little bit about what you guys are doing to help with this friendship, loneliness epidemic at Charles E. Smith, and what other people can be doing.
Sure, absolutely. I love that idea, by the way, of the green bench, but you're absolutely right. I have not come across data that really studies this, right? There's studies on social isolation and loneliness and things, but it's more how many people have this, how many people report it, but that dividing it into the categories like you did, I agree with you. I do see those three categories as well. But we know for sure that community connection in any setting alleviates loneliness and isolation. It also creates a sense of purpose, like I said, for this new person. Now I have something to do. I don't have a job, but this is kind of like a job. Establishing daily structure is very important, especially for the aging brain. We like schedules, we like structure, we like having our breakfast and lunch and dinner at the same time. Those things really, really help the brain also age well and keep you cognitively sharp. So they recognize that. And then encouraging physical health, right? Because going to these things gets you out of your room and gets you moving. And you've done programs on this. Yeah. Movement is everything. I don't like to use the word exercise because a lot of people, exercise has like a negative, it's too hard connotation to it, but movement, just moving, just getting up, just moving from here to there. Movement is important. So I'll give you an example of something that I was proud to be part of recently in our assisted living our assisted living residence called Landau House, we have a 96-year-old lady, and she's a retired college counselor, and she has found renewed purpose in the assisted living now as a director and producer of what she calls the Landau Follies. That's what it's been named. And it started a couple of years ago as an idea of, I see that this one, and that one are really lonely. Nobody talks to them, but they're introverts and they don't talk to other people either. And I wonder if there's something from our generation, because she's 96, our generation that could bring them out. And so, she conceived this whole idea by herself. Music, plays, Broadway hits from the time, famous actors and movies from that time. And so she put together this program where she has about 10, 15, started with 10, now it's up to like 20, different songs that were from their generation that meant something to people that they could be part of and they could sing. We have an Iris music trio that accompanies them. And so she put this whole production on. She little by little started attracting residents. And then how humans are like, oh, wait, where are those 20 people going? I think I want to see what's going on over there. Oh, wait, what's happening over there? I want to be part of that. How come I'm not part of that? And so we were able to incorporate people that normally would not come out and engage. And now call it three Follies programs in. This last one we did last month. Now she's involved the associates as well. So the people who work there can have a role if they want to in this production. And so I participated with my daughter, who's a junior volunteer. She's 16. And we did Midnight Train to Georgia and did a whole rendition. And this last one was a trip around the United States. So it was, where are you from? Because not a lot of people are local Washingtonians.
Right.
Native, I should say. Where are you from? Oh, you're from New York? Oh, California? Oh, Washington? Oh, here. We pick a song. We pick a song. It means something to you. They practice and rehearse for like 6 months. So 3 times a week, they're down at rehearsal. And then the big show comes. It's, red carpet, curtains up. I mean, it's a big production. This is all was started by a 96-year-old. And now everybody's part of the movement. Everybody's so excited about it. We wrote it up in our Full Circle magazine, which I would highly recommend the audience to try to get. It's really, really nice, but she's amazing. We have so much participation, and now we have people that, we're just I'm just sitting here and they're singing and they're practicing and they're rehearsing, and it's brought them out. So that's one thing that the resident came up with. The associates got behind her, leadership supported it. We put resources into it, and now she does 2 per year. So this is like an ongoing yearly thing, and it's a lot of work, but it's fantastic. We have life and leisure directors in every one of our buildings. And so they're very engaged with listening to the resident, listening. What do you guys like? What is meaningful to you? Our generation doesn't know what they went through, or doesn't know what's meaningful to them. We had so many Holocaust survivors on our campus. Our oldest Holocaust survivors are like in 100, hitting 100 right now. And honoring that, commemorating that, helping them through that, doing programs for that. You have to really know your people and listen to them. But sure, there's a lot that communities can do.
So where do I go next? I've got so much stuff that we've gone so far afield from my list of questions, which often happens. But so one of the things as I was prepping for this that kept sort of running back through my head is that we talk a lot about loneliness and isolation, mental well-being for residents. But I find myself wondering if it's as big a problem for our team members. And I don't know that we spend a lot of time. I don't know whether that's an area that you're comfortable talking about, whether you're doing anything with your team members. So I sort of just put that on the table to see whether that's an area that you're comfortable talking about or not.
Sure. Yeah. I'm usually comfortable talking about anything.
Okay.
I like to have data, but sometimes there isn't data.
Right.
Sure, absolutely comfortable, Steve. Not a problem. I think for team members and associates and people, healthcare workers, and the whole broad field, I don't know that I would put it in the loneliness, social isolation category the same way that I would do with the seniors.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've talked about this on your program, and there's a lot of literature about burnout.
Yep.
It's more in that category. That's where I would classify it, more in the, exhaustion, burnout category. Obviously, the pandemic did so many things, to exacerbate that and to bring that to light. But I'll tell you, this just happened like a couple of days ago. So, I do believe in the universe, always listening and sending signs. And you asked this question, which was not part of the promo
Right.
questions, but I brought up to our senior management that I felt that we should address and we should look at more intentionally how to support our team members when they lose residents. Obviously we're in geriatrics. Every day people are dying.
Yep.
Right? We lose our residents every day.
Yep.
Just like in hospitals and everywhere else, there's no debrief. There's no time to pick up those shattered pieces. You got to keep going.
Yeah.
There's 10 other people waiting for you. Your boss is calling. You got meetings. You got emails. You got this. You got to go. I don't know. I think we do not do a good job with setting aside a safe time, a protected time, a safe space where people can just say, you know what? I took care of that person for 15 years. We have associates here that have been here for over 40 years. Yeah. Someone just is retiring after 50 years here. 50, wow. 50. Wow. So let's say they're 75. They started working here as a little over a teenager. They spent their whole life here taking care of older people dying. You bottle it up. You kind of just have to put it somewhere, and it sits there for a long time. And then I find, even like in my own practice, I'm in my 50s, and sometimes I sit back and I think, God, I've lost a lot of people in my short career. I've lost a lot of meaningful relationships. You build relationships with these people. We take care of people who don't have families. We take care of people whose families don't visit. We take care of people who, are by themselves. We're the only people they have. I think we don't do a good job with that. And that's where we can support our colleagues. I think better is to not call it, you don't have to label it, but give them the time and the space to be able to talk about this and to be able to say, it really hurts me that I lost this person after taking care of them for 15 years. And I'm devastated, and having a place to do that.
Yeah. And it's really complicated, right? Because sometimes even when you're taking care of somebody who is really unpleasant, who's difficult, when they disappear out of your life, it creates all kinds of strange feelings, right? Because there might be a little bit of almost relief sometimes that they're gone. You don't have to deal with it. And that brings on guilt. And so I think you make a really, really good point. I'm running short on time, and so I'm going to push pretty hard here on a few more questions because I want to talk. So I also know that you're kind of an anti-drug person. And so I'd like to have you talk a little bit about that and when drugs are appropriate.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So speaking specifically for depression and anxiety, it depends on the population you're looking at, really, and who you're studying. We know that depression and anxiety kind of go together, but let's just focus on depression because that's what the lay people focus on more in the elderly. It is very prevalent. It's high. I think 1 in 3 is a little bit low, quite honestly.
Yeah.
The reports. I would say it's more like 1 in 2 for various reasons. Now, a valid diagnosis of depression or generalized anxiety disorder or whatever it is needs medication. I'm not against medication. Mm-hmm. No, absolutely needs medication. The chemistry is off. These people have suffered a lot in their lives. I think from what I see, again, my patient population, I think it goes under recognized, to be honest with you, Steve. I think community doctors poo-poo it a little bit. I think it's like, well, you lost your husband. It's been a year. You're still a little sad. You don't want to get involved. You're isolated. You're lonely. You're not doing things anymore. You're not eating as well. You're not talking with your family. You were married for 60 years. That's kind of normal. Not really. Yeah. Not really. The longer you've been with a person, the more you're going to feel that loss and the more it's going to affect you. So no, I'm not, reach for the medication first. But I am of the belief that if somebody warrants medication because it will help them get over a hump that's temporary, okay, or they've been undiagnosed for most of their adult life and they really could use chemistry to help them live better, absolutely. Now, do you leave somebody on an antidepressant for 10 years and forget about them? No. That's not what we do in geriatrics. We're always looking at drugs all the time. Can we get rid of some of these drugs? Can we get rid of some of these drugs? Like, I spend half of my practice eliminating medication because they don't need it. But when it comes to depression, anxiety, and mental illness, I do believe the medications have a very important role.
Yeah.
But we also know that with the drugs, psychotherapy and having somebody to talk to and having a group that you can share with is just as powerful. So when you combine the two together, that augmentation effect is phenomenal. And I see this every day. And the results are incredible. And yes, absolutely, they need the medication, but they also need this other piece.
And I worry too often that the medication makes it easier to ignore the other piece, and that's not a good thing. Again, I a few months ago, my stepfather was exhibiting some fairly minor sundowning behaviors, and the staff at the community just mentioned it to the hospice nurse in passing, and the hospice nurse immediately said, "Oh, well, we'll fix this by giving more Seroquel."
Mm-hmm.
And they called me up and said, "Well, we're going to increase the Seroquel," and I said,
yeah,
maybe we're going to wait and think about it a little bit. And so I did some researching and talking, and I called them back and I said, nah, we're not doing that because it had too many negative for the amount of anxiety he was having. It was not a good trade-off. And so I think everybody worries, finding that balance is hard.
Finding the balance is hard. Antipsychotics, we don't reach for firsthand. So that is an antipsychotic. We try to stay away from that as long as possible. And really, that's our last resort. In geriatrics, you're right. The risks usually outweigh the benefits, and you can find other ways to handle sundowning, are other interventions that are non-pharmaceutical. So I agree with you. I think that was a good call. Not knowing the specifics, but I think that was a good call. But looking specifically at depression treated with very safe, long-term data, antidepressants that have been around for a long, long, long time, we know what's safe and what's not. But you're right. Yeah, there are people that, now you're on this med, fine, it's been 20 years, whatever, I think critically it helps for that person to have an advocate like you are for your stepfather and say, hey, does he need 10 medications every day?
That's right.
What are we still doing here? Sometimes I find people, they come in from the community and they're literally like on 20 plus drugs. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like the nurse is going to spend an hour a day just basically giving this person pills, which, they have to eat before, they have to drink, this much fluid with, and they're in the bathroom all the time because they drank this much fluid with their 10 pills. So, in geriatrics right away, like our number one practice is, can we eliminate drugs? Like, how can we get rid of some of these things? And sometimes it's, why do you take 5 vitamins? You eat 3 meals a day. You don't need 5 vitamins.
Yeah.
Why do you take like all this stuff that you read about, 20 years ago that you thought was good and there's really no evidence to show it's good? You don't need all this stuff. And then their life becomes better because they got 2 hours back a day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. So we're about out of time, but I actually have one more question for you, and that's this. If I'm sitting here, I'm a senior living operator, and I'm looking at my resident population, and I know I've got too much loneliness and isolation, I want to do something to make it better. What are one or two sort of places, low hanging fruit, that's real easy to start making a difference?
Absolutely. It's a great question to end this. I think being open to ideas like the example I showed you with our Landau Follies that we're doing, a resident comes to you and says, I think this might be a good idea. Don't poo-poo something like that. They know the people they live with. We don't. Number one. Number two, I think we also don't do a good job with asking the healthcare workers and the people that work with them every day, that are spend 24 hours with them, saying, what do they like? Like, what do they hate? What do they like? What interests them? What programs do you see a lot of people attending? And focusing on that and putting resources into that. And then lastly, I would say, poll your people.
Yeah.
Ask the people who live there, what do you like? What don't you like? We have a happy hour every Friday at 3:00, before Shabbat. They do happy hour and they love it. They all associate. They have their little cake and they have their little, appetizers. Some of them drink alcohol and some of them just have grape juice and they love it. But that is an idea that came from them. So I think in general, humans are not good listeners, right? Because we're always like, we want to talk, we want the center, and we want to be on to the next thing. Like, we move so fast. So it's like, I don't intentionally take the time to listen to what you're telling me.
Yeah.
So operators, I think, talk to your people. Find out what's meaningful for them. Find out what they like and what they hate, and then build on that.
Perfect. Dr. Gill, thank you so much. If people would like to find you, what's the best way to reach out and get in touch with you?
Yeah. You had posted up our website in the beginning, the Smith Life. That's our home care agency, Smith Life Home Care, but SmithLifeCommunities.com or .org. Sorry, SmithLifeCommunities.org. Everything's on our webpage, and I'm on there as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me. I think this is a super important topic because it's about quality of life, and that's ultimately what senior living is offering. So again, thank you so much for joining me. We'll be back next week with new shows.
Fantastic.